Well, good morning, everybody. I hope that there's a lot of enthusiasm in this room because I'm very enthused. I look at the number of people who are here, and doesn't this send a powerful message that the people of Ward 7 care about the development of this ward? You know, one of the things that I promised and that we've been working to try to deliver on is that we would be one city. And one city doesn't mean that everybody gets along with everybody. I mean, that's completely unrealistic. What it means is that wherever you live, in wards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, that you would have the same opportunities as anybody else. You should not be foreclosed from opportunities simply based on geography. And we are working hard to try to make sure that irrespective of where one lives, one has the same opportunities. As a matter of fact, some of you probably know I've started using the term East End of the city. And there's a particular reason why I do that. I've lived over here a very long time, so I didn't just arrive. I didn't just parachute in yesterday. First of all, I am a native Washingtonian. I'm a product of the schools of the District of Columbia. I've lived here all my life, and I've lived on the east end of the city in Ward 7 for a while, a number of years. But you know what? One of the things I discovered, Carrie, is that when you say east of the river, in the minds of some, it's like on the other side of the tracks. You know what? We don't live on the other side of the tracks. We live in the District of Columbia just like everybody else does and deserve the same opportunities as everybody else. We want our communities to be vibrant, right? That's exactly right. We want our communities to be livable, right? We want our communities to be economically strong, right? And we want our communities to be sustainable places to live, work, play, and yes, to do business in the District of Columbia. So that's why we're here today. It really is. It is truly an exciting time for our city and especially for Ward 7. And those are not just words. Those are realities that we are living with today. We are adding population in ways that nobody else in the nation is adding population. We are doing things in this city that nobody else in the nation is doing. We are adding somewhere between 1,100 and 1,200 people a month to the population of the District of Columbia. And what that is doing, frankly, is helping us to create more jobs, and it is helping to be able to improve the tax base of the District of Columbia. We are now in the strongest economic position that this city has ever been in this city. Does it mean that we don't have challenges and issues to overcome? Of course we do. But it means that we are going in the right direction, and we need to stay the course in order to make sure that we continue to tackle the issues in the city. How many of you all have one of these? Can I ask you to pull it out, please? I want you all to become familiar with this. And it wouldn't take much. We're going to go through it a little bit, okay? But see what it says at the top? Why the District of Columbia is the place to be. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about that. You know, I have heard so often, well, if you want to know about this, you go to New York. If you want to go know about this, you go to Chicago or Los Angeles or Timbuktu or South Dakota or North Dakota. How many of you all have noticed, if you've been here long enough, that no matter what issue you used to talk about, somebody could always tell you where the place is where it was better. It was never better in the District of Columbia. And you know what, council member? Doesn't that get under your skin after a point? It gets under mine because I am so competitive. I care so deeply. I am such a homie that if you talk about pitching pennies to the line, I'll say, let's compete with that, okay? And so I am competitive. And you know what's happened, council member, in the last, 12 months? We have started getting all kinds of accolades for our city. And so we decided that we would put them in one place. And I'm not sure this one place is going to be enough because there are 2 or 3 more that have happened just in the last couple of weeks. because we wanted the people of this city to understand how it is that we are doing. Now, this is nothing that we made up, because under each one of these you will see the name of where it came from. For example, how many of you all knew that we now have the strongest economy in the United States of America? How many of you all knew that? Something that we can be proud of, ladies and gentlemen. We are #1 in the U.S. for LEED certified buildings. We have a sustainability plan, and we are now working hard to be able to be the best in the nation, not just the region, the best in the nation. We are the #1 new tech hotspot, because as we work to be able to expand our economy based on our economic development 5-year plan, we know that technology is one of the ways in which we're going to be able to expand jobs. That's why we're building a new Ballou High School. That's why we have a new H.D. Woodson High School. That's why we have put so much effort and resources in Anacostia High School, to try to make sure we prepare our young people for the jobs of the future. In one way or the other, there's STEM education in every high school on the east end of the District of Columbia. Why? Because it's getting our kids oriented to these opportunities. Some will be able to go on after high school, others will go to community college, some will go to 4-year schools, and others will go on to graduate school, and some will get PhDs. And yes, our young people on the East End are smart enough to be able to get PhDs if they want to do that. Aren't our kids smart enough? We're now the #1 retail market on the East Coast. We are the #1 city in America, best city for college grads. We are the best educated city in America. Does that mean that we've solved every education problem? Of course not. It just means that when you look at the education levels of the people who live in the city, we rank #1 when you compare us to other cities. When you turn over to the other side, I want you to look at the second one down. That we got an award, the Bright Idea Award from Harvard University. That's not too shabby, is it? No? You know why? It's for our One City, One Hire program, which has now gotten back to work 6,500 people. Our unemployment level has gone from 11.2% when we came into office to today being 8.5%, council member. And you know where the largest gains have been made? In wards 5, 7, and 8. Yes, we still have people unemployed, and we've got work to do. But the unemployment level has come down by 3 percentage points in Ward 5, 3 percentage points in Ward 7, and we've gone in Ward 8 from an unbelievable high of 30% to being down to 20% at this stage, which is still huge. We got a lot of work to do. But we're going in the right direction, and we're focusing on the right areas of the District of Columbia. So Harvard University said, we really think that's a great idea you guys came up with, and we're going to give you a Bright Idea Award for the One City, One Hire program. We, for the first time in the history of this city, reached the top 10 in venture capital investment. And what that means is that people are seeing the benefits of the District of Columbia, and they're now investing. We've never been in the top 10 in the history of this city for venture capital. That means people who are willing to put their money down on a new business to help invest and grow it. We also are #2. You know, all these #2s are fine, but I got to find out who's #1, because we're coming for them. #2 in U.S. real estate investment. #2 fittest city. #2 U.S. meeting destination. And we are the #2 hippest city in the United States of America. Now, whatever it means, I don't know. But you know what? If you're #2 in it, it sounds good to me. The only thing wrong with it is we're not #1 yet. You know, and I'm saying this to say the following. And I say this as somebody who's been in this city all my life. I have had so many days when I have felt like the people who live in this city, that we as a city suffer from low self-esteem. We let people talk bad about the city. And sometimes we got folks who join right in with them. Yeah, I agree with you. What they got going over there is awful. I like what they got going on in Maryland or Virginia or Delaware or Rhode Island or Texas or North Dakota or whatever. It is time for us to recognize that we are far better than people have acknowledged and have given us credit for, and if we don't stand up for ourselves, nobody else is going to stand up for us. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's become bullish on the District of Columbia. Let's take pride in our city. Let's get rid of low self-esteem, and let's get people to stand up and say, yes, if you want to talk how we grow the District of Columbia and be good at this, we want to hear about it. If you want to talk bad about the District of Columbia, I'm not interested. Go down the street, across the line somewhere and talk to somebody else, because I'm not interested in all that. Are we going to raise our self-esteem, ladies and gentlemen? That's weak, man. Come on, y'all can do better than that. And so we have worked to try to become one city. We developed the One City Action Plan, which we've been working on to try to make that happen. The 5-year Economic Development Plan, which I talked about earlier. And I see people walking around today with sustainable DC shirts on because we want to become the most sustainable city in America. Now, our economic development plan has some very ambitious goals. And I see our deputy mayor over on the other side, who I think has done a fantastic job of leading our efforts around economic development and planning in the city. Our planning director is here today, Harriet Tregoning. So we brought all the troops out today because we want everybody to understand that we are committed to making this happen. Now, there are 2 major goals for our economic development strategy. The first one is to create 100,000 new jobs in the District of Columbia. And one of the ways to do that is through economic development. We said we would create 100,000 new jobs over the next 5 years. And it can happen. But, Victor, it's more than just creating the jobs, right? Anybody know, of every 10 jobs in the city, how many residents of the District of Columbia occupy those jobs? Is it 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10? You say 2. That's a low number. Anybody else got another number? 7. You know what? Mr. Rucker's close to right. It's 3 out of every 10. That means for every 10 jobs that we have in the District of Columbia, 7 of those jobs are occupied by people who live somewhere else. And frankly, imagine if those people lived in the District of Columbia, paid their taxes in the District of Columbia, we would be able to recycle those dollars and continue to do even better than what we are doing now. You see, we can't tax income at its source. Everybody know what I mean? It means that if you live in Maryland and work in the District of Columbia, where do you pay your taxes? That's right. If you live in Virginia and work in the District of Columbia, where do you pay your taxes? And as a result, how much does the district benefit from those tax dollars? Nothing. That's why it's so important for us not only to grow the economy, but also to make sure that we compete for and have those jobs available for people in the city. Otherwise, what you wind up with is an imported workforce. And a substantial part, that's what we have now, an imported workforce. That's why we've been so insistent with One City, One Hire, that if you don't live in the city, you don't get a job under One City, One Hire, because we got to get our own people back to work. 6,500 people got jobs under One City, One Hire. 6,500 of those people live in the District of Columbia. Jobs for the people of the District of Columbia. And that's where we need to start. Jobs for the people of the city. The other thing is generating $1 billion of new tax revenue. $1 billion. Imagine if we had $1 billion additional. What would that be, Victor? $200 million a year? Anybody anybody know how much we just opened a Costco. That's one of our visions, right? To end retail leakage. Who knows what retail leakage is? Money going out of the city, that's right. I mean, how many of y'all have heard, what you doing this weekend? I'm going to Pentagon City. I'm going to Montgomery Mall. Y'all, I'm going out to White Flint. How many times have y'all heard that? Well, you know what? Our job is to get people who are outside the city to say, where are you going? I'm going into D.C. I'm shopping at wherever. And you know what? Anybody know how much in sales Costco is projecting annually? Sales means everything that you sell, right? 50 million, that's a pretty big number, isn't it? Any other guesses? $150 million. The first 3 days that they were open, they had $750,000 a day in sales at Costco. That's tax dollars that are staying right in the District of Columbia because of the sales taxes and the income taxes that the employees pay there, because most of the people who work at Costco live in the District of Columbia, because we made sure of that. So that one place, that's why we want to create more. But you know what? As we create more, we got to make sure that we don't ride past them, okay, heading somewhere to, you know, another county, somewhere else in the US of A. We got to make sure we do business right here in the District of Columbia. So we got 6 visions. Creating a business-friendly economy, that is so the retailers want to come here. There's no mandate for people to come here. I wish I could require people to locate their business here. I can't. I can't. And as long as our people are willing to go outside the city and shop somewhere else, you make it easy for people not to locate in the city. Becoming a tech center, we've already talked about that. Becoming the destination of choice, ending retail leakage, I just mentioned that. Becoming a global medical center, and making it easy and more acceptable for foreign investors to invest in the District of Columbia. Victor, we've tremendously increased just the number of tourists, visitors coming from China, is that right? Anybody know, we increased our tourists from one year to the next, from 2011 to 2012, by how many? Anybody know? How many more visitors did we have to the city in 2012 than we did in 2011? 1 million is exactly right. We had 1 million more people. We went from 17.9 million to 18.9 million. And the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, we can continue to do that if we are a city that is welcoming. You know what? Sounds strange to say, but a city is a business too, isn't it? You've got to be able to figure out how to generate the resources. And our money comes from 3 places principally. From property taxes, which means the more development that we do, smart development, we generate more taxes because the property's on the tax roll. It comes from income taxes, so that the more people we have who work in the city and live in the city, that's more dollars being recycled in the city. And the other area, what was that? No, we don't count on speed. I don't count on speed cameras for revenue. That's a public safety. Public safety. Go tell the people on Florida Avenue about whether it's a public safety or not. The situation that they had up there, that was horrible. Where this woman got run over by an SUV that was speeding, dragged for 30 yards, and of course she was killed. So the other one is sales taxes, and that is what we sell in the city generates sales taxes, and we keep those dollars right here in the District of Columbia. You're going to see they're going to see a video, is that right, Don? You see a video very soon that will show you a big picture overview of the investments across the ward. It will include schools, it will include recreation centers, and we'll talk about expanding access to transportation. We know that this ward, this probably is the most neighborhood-based ward in the city. We have wonderful neighborhoods in this ward, and we have a great diversity of neighborhoods. And we're constantly working to try to get those neighborhoods working together. That's why, by the way, we have over 400 people who are registered for this event today. What a powerful message that sends about the interest in Ward 7, the commitment of Ward 7. And so we're going to continue to work, and we're going to continue to work hard to try to bring more development to Ward 7. You look at what's happening right in Minnesota and Benning. That was a project that was stalled, and we worked to get it going. We've been working on Skyland, the longest uncompleted project in the history of the world. That's the truth. We got people in here to know the Skyland discussion goes back to 1988, 1989. You know what, the day that it's completed, there'll be some of us who won't know what to do. But it's going to get done. We just completed 4800 Nanny Helen Burroughs Avenue, and Anthony Wash, I want to congratulate him on the work that he did to be able to make that happen. And there's a lot more to come. So I want to now introduce somebody who I've enjoyed being the friend of, worked closely with, worked hard with, a partner in helping to bring economic development to this ward, to focus on health care, because she's now the chair of the Committee on Health in the District of Columbia. Please join me in welcoming the council member of Ward 7, Yvette Alexander.
I told the mayor, I said, I'm hoping that's me he's talking about. Good morning. I know the mayor just said that he wants to present a video. I just wanted to bring greetings, and I'm so excited to see so many Ward 7 residents in the room. And that means we are interested in our ward, in our community. We do want the best for our community. Mr. Mayor, and being a native daughter of the District of Columbia as well, let me tell you, my esteem for my city and for my ward has always been high, because I always saw the best in my community. We can clap for that. And I mention that because I went to schools that were outside of my community. And also, when I went to Howard University, people had hey, ain't you? But people had, even though it was in the District of Columbia, people from the outside of the district had an image about Washington, D.C., and about Southeast Washington when I was there. So I always defended and stood up for the best of my city. And I also let my classmates come over to my community so they could see, you know, so we could debuff the myths that they had about our city and our communities. And that's very important too. So always stand up for Ward 7. You're here, you believe in Ward 7, stand up for Ward 7. But I'm also, and we know, those of us who have been here, we know. And those of us who are here, that's why we are here, because we know Ward 7 is indeed a jewel in the District of Columbia. But we want economic development, and we see other parts of the city growing, and that's why I'm so excited, and I thank the mayor and his team for investing in Ward 7. We have a lot going on in Ward 7, and this is also an education for all of you to learn what's going on in Ward 7, but we also want your feedback. We want to know, because it takes a community to build a community. So we want to hear from each and every one of you. But the education piece is very important, because as I go around the ward, you know, a lot of the residents are saying, why don't we have this? Or what retail are we bringing in? Or what housing are we bringing in? Is it affordable? Is it market rate? Are we going to get Bloomingdale's? Are we going to get the dollar store? You know, I mean, it's those kind of conversations that we want to educate you on what it takes to get what we need. What are the retailers looking for? What are ideal communities? And what do we need to do to step up our game as well. So this is going to be an education piece for one, but it's also going to be a feedback and us taking in what the community is really looking for in terms of economic development and economic prosperity in Ward 7. How can we build up our community? So I'm excited. We have a lot of great things going on. You're going to see, and many of you know about the great things. You can see it when you drive around our community, but it's very important to hear from you. So thank you all for participating on this Saturday. It's really going to be worth your while, and we have to keep working. And isn't H.D. Woodson beautiful? This is a phenomenal, phenomenal building. Now, not only is it a phenomenal building, we have to have what's inside of this building to be phenomenal too. So we're going to work on that too, because it doesn't just take physical structures, it takes what's going on inside of them too to be phenomenal. So I'm glad you all are here, and this is awesome. I know that we are well on our way to keep moving forward in Ward 7. So thank you all for your participation. And for the children that came out too, thank you, young, old, and in between.
All right, thank you, Mayor Gray and Councilmember Alexander. Let's have a hand for them again. Okay, so I'm Don Edwards. I'm going to serve as your lead facilitator this morning. I'm a senior associate with AmericaSpeaks, and I'm very, very honored to be here. But without any further ado, are you ready to get to work? I can't hear you. Okay, sounds like you're ready. All right, so let's make sure that we're ready to dig in here. We've got two main objectives that we want to accomplish today. One, we want to show you a big picture overview of investment and development that's already underway in Ward 7. And then we want to make sure that you can understand the connections between all of these projects, because it's a big ward and there's actually a lot that you'll see going on, but there's been a strategy behind all of that. We also want to focus your attention underneath that overview on some strategic locations. That means that there are some ways in which you're going to provide guidance to the decision makers, to the mayor, to the deputy mayor, and other decision makers about where you want to see retail areas develop, where you want specific projects to be prioritized. Because in truth, we cannot do everything at the same time. That makes sense, right? Okay, so your guidance is one of the things that's critical. So those are our two big objectives. Now, let me tell you briefly how the agenda is set up. You all should have a packet, and you should have an agenda in your packet, so if you want to open it up and follow, that would work real well. Number one, we're going to make sure that you know who you're sitting with at your table. I'll go into this a little bit more, but after the table introductions, we're going to do a little exercise we call Let's Find Out Who's in the Room. We want to make sure that we have a sense that Ward 7 is actually represented, that we've got a nice cut of Ward 7 present. It's going to be followed by the big picture review. I talked about that. That's going to give you the ward level look, 25,000 feet on everything that's going on. Then we want to dig a little deeper into this question of Retail 101. What are the opportunities as well as some of the challenges and limitations? So there becomes a much clearer picture of what's possible, when, and what it will take to be achieved. We're going to have a lunch pause, and by that I mean we're not going to take a break, we're not going to stop. The day is full, we're going to drop the food at the table. We're going to keep rolling. Talk more about that later. Then after lunch, that pause, we're going to have some other presentations, and they're going to focus first on downtown Ward 7, Minnesota and Benning. Everybody knows that Ward 7 has a downtown, yes? All right, we're going to focus there. And then we're going to talk about 5 strategic locations for retail and other development. And we want you to, this is where we're going to be really looking for some additional guidance from you. In order to do that, you'll have some presentations, followed by an opportunity for you to give some discussions. And then we'll ask you some questions and poll to see where we want to get the focus of priorities. After those things, we'll be ready to talk about what we've learned today and then what are the next steps. And the mayor is already ready to talk about the next steps that are going to come after today's summit. That's the agenda. Now, here's what we need to find out. We need to find out who's in the room. And this is an exercise that everybody can participate in. Mayor Gray especially wants to know if we have the kind of diversity in the room that is reflected in the census data about Ward 7. And so we're going to ask you now to take your keypads out. You got your keypads? We're going to basically ask you some questions and you get to vote using your keypad. Let's answer that question. What is your gender? All right, here we go. 67% female, 33% male. All right, that's in comparison to how the ward is represented in red. So we have a little bit more women here today than is represented in the ward's population, and we're happy that everyone is here. All right, age. What is your age? Tell the truth now. Nobody, we are not tracking this, so just tell the truth. Okay, here's our age distribution. We've got 27% of the room is 65 or better, and the highest percentage of people in the room are 45 or older. So what we really are looking at is what's our comparison. So in the ward, we have overrepresentation of every group. We're about equal for 35 to 44, but we're underrepresented in that 25 to 34, and we're underrepresented in the other categories younger. So we could have done a little bit better on our younger people. All right, let's go to our next question. What is your race or ethnicity? Make your choice. Everybody knows what their race and ethnicity is. All right, here are our results. 83% African American Black. All right, let's see what our comparison is. The ward is 94% African American Black. Let's see. So we've got overrepresentation in white or Caucasian, which we want to think is a good thing, and we've definitely got some other areas in which we would like to see more diversity come up to the representation in the ward. All right, let's go to the next. Let's go to the next one. What is your household income? Tell the truth here too. We're not tracking this. This data doesn't. We can't trace it back to you. All right, let's see how this compares. This is all comparing with census data. So we actually have in the room overrepresentation, over 75, 50 to 75. Okay. In the category of under 25,000, okay, so what we actually have here is a representation of people who are at the higher income levels. So we want to be mindful of who is not in the room so that we can also make sure that their interests get represented even though they're not here. All right, next question. Okay, which statements apply to you? In this one, you can select all of the choices that apply. You can enter multiple numbers. I would say that it may be multiple. Some of you may have as many as 5. So go ahead and enter the numbers that apply. All right, we've got all of our entries. 83% of you live in Ward 7. 27% worship in Ward 7, 48% shop in Ward 7. That's a great statistic. What's this? We don't have a way to compare, but this is all very interesting and important data as we begin to shape a strategy to have more of you live, work, worship, own businesses, shop in Ward 7. That's what this is all about. How do we increase these numbers? Thank you so much. All right, now the last one is very important because this does begin to tell us who is actually committing to making Ward 7 all that it can be. I've lived in Ward 7 for, make your choice here, and again, this is one where you can only make one choice. All right, okay. We've got people who we have 36% of the folks who have been here more than 30 years in Ward 7. We've got almost 50% of the room has been here from 20 to more than 30 years. So that's also representative of a long time commitment to Ward 7. And we have a lot of people who are here who've been for 10 years or under, 25%. So we've got some new people in the room as well. That's very important. All right. Now, we're going to get a report from the theme team. While we were doing that exercise, they were working. And what we're going to do is let you have an idea of some of the things that you communicated from your tables. This is how it works. So this is a word cloud that we're going to get first. A word cloud is some of the words that we got from you. So there are a lot of people here from River Terrace. The larger the word, the more people that put in that they were from River Terrace. So some people are here from Deanwood, Fort DuPont. So this is how the word cloud works. Now, let's go to why you are here today. This will not be everything that they captured, but these are some of the statements that they captured many times. So these are some of the themes. Why are you here today? To learn about economic development already taking place, to actively participate and support my community, to learn about what is happening in River Terrace. I guess that's why so many people are here from River Terrace. To raise concerns about changes in the community and to make sure everyone in Ward 7 benefits equally. So those were some of the themes that you reported, and I hope some of your themes got captured here. All right, now, we're gonna move forward to the next item on our agenda. Let me thank you for doing that early work. That's how the day is gonna work. We get some discussion, then we poll, then we do some more presentations, and we just go through that pattern. So now we're gonna get a big overview, the big picture for Ward 7, and it's gonna be a focus, and we want you to pay attention. So one of the reasons we're here is so that we can all understand more completely what development has happened in the ward and what's happening currently and what's coming. So that's a big part of why we're here, to keep everybody up to date and current. Now, you may be aware that there are some specific projects, and we want you to now know about all the projects, how they fit together, what the strategy has been thus far, and we want you to know all that because at some point we have to make some prioritizations and give some guidance about where we want to focus resources and investments. So, as you listen to this presentation, you've got a handout, all right? So take your handout. You've also got a map in your individual packets. So use those to help follow this presentation. So one of the things that we're gonna ask you to think about as you're watching this, and you can make some notes on your worksheet number 2. What have we accomplished in recent years, including all of the new residential development, the retail, the transportation improvements, new and renovated public facilities, public schools, all those things. So we want you to be thinking about that, what you know. And then we want you to be paying attention and listen for what's currently being built or what's coming. So we'll go ahead now and start this big picture, recent development, review, overview. Pay attention to what's on the screen.
As we begin the big picture review, Let's take a look at how we get around the ward. Local residents and commuters use approximately 11 major roads or thoroughfares on a daily basis. These roads not only get us from our homes to our destinations, but they also serve as important corridors providing much-needed retail, government, cultural, and civic services for the communities they serve. These major corridors can define a given neighborhood and how well it will function. Also critical to how the ward functions on a daily basis are the 5 metro stations providing transit services for those who live or work in the ward, ranging from the Stadium Armory Station to the west or the Capitol Heights Metro located to the east, just across the district line. These metro stations are important to the future economic development opportunities for Ward 7. The system of park, land, and trails also serves as a valuable asset to the Ward 7 community. Specifically, the Marvin Gaye Park and Trail system connects Kenilworth through Deanwood to the Capitol Heights Metro Station. For the big picture review, we have divided the ward into 3 different zones: Zone 1 to the south, Zone 2 to the east, and Zone 3 to the north and west. Today's presentation will highlight some, not all, of the recent and current accomplishments. For many years, the district and the community have been working towards a redeveloped Skyland Town Center. The project will consist of approximately 475 residential units, 340,000 square feet of retail space, including one of the ward's 2 Walmart stores. Groundbreaking is projected for spring 2014. Just up the road on Alabama Avenue is the Francis Gregory Library, a brand new facility completed last June. We have also seen recent investments to improve the Hillcrest Recreation Center. Coming soon will be an additional $500,000 for a new playground. In our next region of the ward, the developer A&R and the Housing Authority are finalizing details for Capitol Gateway Marketplace, which will provide residents with employment and much-needed retail services at the ward's 2nd Walmart location. Strategically located on the border and adjacent to the Capitol Heights Metro, this project will make the district competitive with Maryland for retail spending. At Eden Place on Eastern Avenue, the district has worked with developers to provide 63 units of affordable housing for residents of mixed incomes. Mayor Gray has also budgeted $12 million to renovate the Marvin Gaye Recreation Center, one of the final pieces to the Marvin Gaye Park and Trail system. In the central area of the ward are 2 unique projects improving the quality of life for many of our young residents. The Washington Nationals Baseball Academy, one of only 2 facilities of its kind in the entire country, will open in the fall of 2013, providing quality programs and enrichment for the district's youth. Up the hill from the Baseball Academy, an additional $20 million has been budgeted to replace the Fort DuPont Ice Arena with a new 2-rink facility. In our 3rd region of the ward, DDOT is spending $15 million to complete the last segment of the Anacostia Riverwalk. This connection will link the Bladensburg waterfront to Benning Road as it passes through Kenilworth, Eastland Gardens, Mayfair, and Parkside. With an investment of $16 million, DDOT's new Parkside pedestrian bridge will create a more direct and safe connection for Mayfair and Parkside residents to downtown Ward 7. A completion date is slated for 2015. Metro Towns will provide 83 units of affordable home ownership and 42 low-income rental units. Construction and delivery is currently underway. Victory Square, which was recently completed, is a 98-unit project for low and moderate income seniors. There are also several other important initiatives and projects completed or underway in Parkside. Located next to Neville Thomas Elementary School, EduCare is an early childhood educational facility and community center built to serve the children and families of Ward 7. In 2012, construction began on Unity Parkside Healthcare, a $26 million facility providing improved healthcare opportunities for residents. In December 2012, DC Promise Neighborhood Initiative received a major $25 million grant from the Department of Education. Over the next 5 years, DCP&I will work to improve educational outcomes for students by providing wraparound services and support to families. At the Minnesota Avenue Metro Station are the headquarters of the Department of Employment Services. Playing a vital role in job training, workforce development, and employment-related services for the entire district, the agency's presence plays an important role in downtown Ward 7. Park 7, a joint venture between Donatelli and Blue Sky, is a mixed-use and transit-oriented project. Currently under construction, the project will offer 376 residential apartment units and 22,000 square feet of retail. As part of the New Communities Initiative for Lincoln Heights and Richardson dwellings, 2 off-site housing projects are complete. The first was 4427 Hayes Street, a renovation project totaling 26 units with 9 replacement units. With the official ribbon-cutting ceremonies just last week, the Nanny Helen is a new construction project consisting of 70 affordable units and over 7,000 square feet of retail, fitness, and other community space. A few blocks away in the same neighborhood, the 6th District Police Headquarters will relocate to the former Merritt Middle School. As a result of new ward boundaries, Hill East is now a Ward 7 project. With the challenge of relocating existing government and institutional uses on the site, DMPED issued a solicitation for 2 of the available parcels in October 2012. The city received 1 proposal for 353 units of residential development. With the 8th Street Benning line stretching from Union Station to Benning Road and terminating at Minnesota Avenue, streetcar will improve transit options for residents and will make downtown Ward 7 a much stronger economic hub. The ward is fortunate to have 3 great street corridors. Nanny Helen Burroughs has benefited from $12.8 million in streetscape improvements. Pennsylvania Avenue has seen $33.5 million in streetscape funding. And Minnesota Avenue is scheduled for $14 million in future improvement projects. In addition, over $200,000 in Great Streets funding has been granted to businesses in Ward 7 along Pennsylvania and Nanny Helen Burroughs. Also pivotal to the success of the ward is improving the physical plant of our schools. Over the next 6 years, Mayor Gray has budgeted $164 million for school construction for the following elementary schools: Aton, Houston, Plummer, River Terrace, Kimball, C.W. Harris, Smothers, Burrville, Charles Drew, Beers, Knoll, and Neville Thomas. In addition to school construction dollars, there are also important affordable housing projects receiving funding from DHCD. The agency is providing over $24 million in local and federal funds to 8 different projects in the ward. With all these investments, Ward 7 is creating a strong platform for economic development. As we conclude the big picture review, we ask you to think about and provide input on what else is required to improve Ward 7 in the future.
So this has been a lot of information, and we want you to begin to digest it. And this isn't even everything. We had to kind of restrict it to the very highest level, big impact things. There's actually quite a bit in the pipeline in Ward 7. But this does give you a good flavor of what's been thought about, what's been lined up. And it's important that you have a sense of not only what's coming, but what's in the pipeline. Now, with this bigger picture, we want you to have a discussion at your table about what it means for you. You all are from all over the ward. So we want you to focus on the benefits that it will have to the ward as well as to you in particular, where you live, your neighborhood. So there are at least 2 dimensions. And so we want you to focus on 2 questions. What do you see as the key benefits that will come to Ward 7 residents, the whole ward, as a result of these developments? We also want you to talk about what kind of economic development still needs to occur. So 2 dimensions, all right? So you've got a worksheet. You can pull out your worksheet and jot down some thoughts. Then your table facilitator is going to ask people and probably do 1 question at a time. You also have a big picture map that you can refer to and get clarifications about anything you want. These benefits should be as broad as you want them to be. They don't only have to be retail or commercial. They can be many different kinds of ideas, and you should brainstorm that out with yourself a little bit. All right, let's get to work. All right. Theme team was busy at work, and so we want to now hear back from them on the benefits of development. So these were the key benefits that you sent to them. Number one, jobs, jobs, jobs. Safer and more secure neighborhoods, better and more diverse retail, retention of residents and attraction of new ones, transportation and infrastructure improvements, more affordable and new housing, improving the quality of life in Ward 7, better education, more jobs and internships for young people, keeping revenue in the community, keeping it in the district, keeping it in the ward. Those were the key benefits. So now we're going to ask you to pick the top two. Put the number in for the top two. Now, here's the results. I can see them. Here we go. 40%. Number one, jobs, jobs, jobs. Number two, 23. That's better and more diverse retail. Busboys and Poets, Starbucks, Target. All right, so those were the top two. But close behind, better education and more job and internships opportunities for our young people. Okay, thank you very much. So that is something that the mayor, Deputy Mayor Hoskins, that's what they're going to pay attention to. All right, now, development we still need. This is what you told the theme team. Greater variety of retail choices. Sit-down restaurants, grocery stores, dollar stores, and entertainment. So that's diversity of retail choices. Support for new local small businesses. That's entrepreneurship. Yep. Yep. Focus on jobs, especially for young people joining the workforce. We can also look at some of those young people becoming some of those new and local small business owners. How about that? More housing options, mixed income, affordable, and senior living. Yep, housing options. An emphasis on healthy living, healthy eating options, recreation centers, and medical facilities. All right, so now we get to choose again the top two. This is development we still need. Pick up your keypad, choose the top two. All right, here are results. Number one choice is number one, the greater variety of retail choices, closely followed by number 5, which is the emphasis on healthy living. Wow, now that's helpful. That's a great, it's almost like two priorities for number one. What was our second priority? Go back for me. So really, if you look at number 38, that's our second, more housing options, mixed income, affordable, and senior living. That's excellent guidance, and it helps determine where the new strategic investments should be applied. Thank you for both of those exercises, very helpful. And I hope, of course, that you all saw some of your input reflected on these lists. Now, we're going to move a little bit deeper. A big part of this day has been organized to help you understand where the opportunities are, where the challenges and some of the limitations. We are needing to be clear about how you get from where we are in Ward 7 to where we want to go. And it requires paying some attention. So I'm going to ask that you focus in on this presentation we're getting ready to give you. Heather Arnold is a director of Street Sense. She's spoken to many people in the ward many, many different times. And she is going to help you understand some of what creates vibrant retail neighborhoods, cores, what is going to transform Ward 7 in the ways that we have begun to talk about it. So please pay attention to this presentation. I want to bring Heather Arnold, my good friend and colleague, up to the stage.
Thank you, everybody. Are you all holding in there okay? I know it's almost lunchtime, but stick with me, okay? You know, I was really inspired by Ms. Brown's pieces today, and it made me change my mind about how I wanted to introduce myself to you. So instead of going through all of my projects and experience, I wanted to tell you a little bit about me that we have in common. So I've done work all over the District of Columbia, and most of my work is helping communities figure out how to maximize their retail potential. But Ward 7 is sincerely one of my favorite places to work. And that's because I grew up in a rural town in Pennsylvania where people worked together, where they helped each other, where they tried to lift each other up. My parents ran a retail store, and there were some months when we had lots of extra money and could donate to the neighborhood causes. And then there were the months when my tuition was 2 months late because it wasn't a great retail season for us. And all of those things came together to influence how I approach my work today, how I think about communities like Ward 7, and how I want to work with you all. Because I see one of the greatest strengths of this neighborhood is being an area where every time I come here, somebody has something positive to say, everybody has something aspirational they want to achieve, and they're looking to work together to do it. And so that was the biggest reason that I was really excited to be here today. Now I have two different types of presentations I can give to you today. I can give you the one where I sweet talk you and lead you on, or I can give you the one where I tell you the truth. And I'm gonna let you pick. I hear a lot of truth. That's good, because I really only had one presentation and I was going to tell you the truth. So let's get started. I call this Retail 101. You all qualify for college credit at Howard University after this presentation. Okay, first thing I wanted to do is define retail. Everybody talks about it a little bit differently. When I talk about retail, I'm talking about stores, I'm talking about places where you go for services, I'm talking about restaurants. All of them are included under the heading of retail. What it doesn't include are storefronts that are occupied by non-retail uses, so offices, churches, daycares. We talk about those as non-retail uses. I'm going to bring that up during my presentation. Harriet Tregoning is going to talk about non-retail uses during hers. So keep in mind, those are the things that fit into those two general categories. Now, when we talk about retail, I like to talk about it in terms of its purpose. People have all kinds of different reasons that they want retail, that they hope for it, and that they strive for it. The first one on the top I call retail as identity, which is this idea of, I want a great home goods store in my neighborhood because that's who I am. I care about my house. I spend a lot of money on ceramics, and therefore, home decor should be in my neighborhood because that's who I am. My retail should represent me. Retail as an amenity is the second one. We see a lot of that happening around downtown Ward 7 right now. It's an amenity to the people who occupy the floors above or the surrounding neighborhood. So if I'm going to build an office building, I want to have a coffee shop at the ground floor because I know it will be easier for me to lease spaces to the offices above. Then I talk about retail as tax generation. We deal with this in the suburbs a lot. It doesn't become such a big issue here, but none of the suburbs want to have all residential projects anymore, because all that translates into them is money they have to pay for schools. So they want commercial development in the form of office and retail. Retail is a civic use. Now we're getting to where I live and breathe. Retail is a civic use, being my house is mine, that office is theirs, but this retail is ours. Really thinking about it as the extension of our park system, our sidewalks, our playgrounds. Retail is the place where we can come together. But what I'm going to focus on today is this idea of retail as commerce. This is sort of like the down and dirty, nickels and dimes, gotta pay the taxes element of retail that I want to make sure everybody in this room understands. Because fundamentally, unless we have retail that functions at that retail commerce level, all those other ambitions we have above it are really hard to accomplish. But if we can meet that fundamental goal at the bottom, we can start to talk about retail serving those other purposes in our community. Fundamentally speaking, retail economics comes down to this. So you will also qualify for Retail Economics 101 after today. The total amount of customers and their spending equals the total amount of retail establishments that we can support. I know this sounds so fundamental and so basic, but you'd be surprised by the number of communities, planning offices, economic development authorities who just want to build retail to activate streets, to create points of community interaction for reasons that have nothing to do with that fundamental idea of retail as commerce. And one of the things that I always say to them in that situation is we are looking for an equilibrium. What's happening across the country right now is that we've built so much retail space because we thought 2008 was going to last forever, that we have too much retail space and not enough money to fill it with valid retail stores. And what we need to get back to is thinking about this supply and demand curve and how we get back to an equilibrium where our supply and our demand are the same. This is really important. I want to make sure that if I ask you one thing you picked up from my presentation today, I hope it's this. Retail spending is finite. It is a resource that has limits. And because of that, our ability to build stores are limited. And when we act like they aren't, we end up with retail that's not good quality and doesn't meet our expectations, just like your theming just illustrated in the last point. What's happening in Ward 7 is we've got more retail in the wrong places that we can't support with our existing customer demand. You wanted the truth, right? That's the truth. And until we start to fix that problem, we're not going to get what we want. Thanks. So let's think about this as spending. Every certain amount of that spending needs to go into a retail establishment. And when you start to divide it up, it shows you what kind of operations you can support. And that's how I look at communities. How is the spending going to dictate what we can reasonably support as a community? Now let's imagine that this black logo here is your house. The way that you operate within the context of the market varies depending on what you're shopping for. So let's say you need groceries. I really hope that you get to go to that little blue shop that's not too far away. I have a feeling that's not the truth though, and we're going to find out the answer in just a minute. When you want to go out to dinner with your husband or your wife or your friends, I hope you get to go to the red store. It's a little bit further away, you're willing to travel a little bit more, it doesn't have to be quite so convenient, and you might be willing to go a little bit further for an experience. And that orange store, I think of that as where you're going to buy, I always say your Mother's Day present, but a special gift if you don't necessarily buy her we had a lot of men on the team who just call proflowers.com. I was like, that's not cool, guys, go shopping for your moms. So where you go shopping for a special gift might represent that orange thing. Very rarely are you doing all of those three kinds of shopping in the same place. And so, I'm gonna ask you, I get to do a polling question, which I'm totally excited about. Where do you shop for groceries most often? And on your keypads, you get a chance to answer 1 through 6. Choice number 1, downtown Ward 7, the intersection of Minnesota and Benning. Fairfax Village out there on Pennsylvania Avenue, Fairlawn in there on Pennsylvania Avenue, somewhere else in Ward 7, somewhere outside Ward 7 but still within the district, and somewhere outside DC altogether. Okay. I had a sense that I knew the answer to this question, but I was really hoping I was wrong. We're going to talk about that in just a second. I hear you. I totally know what you're talking about. Okay, now let's take it a step further. Where do you go when you shop for a special gift? Number 1, inside Ward 7. Number 2, outside Ward 7, but still in DC. Number 3, outside DC. And number 4, over the internet. Okay, I want to tell you that I'm surprised by these numbers. I actually am really gratified to have actual data to put behind what we always thought was true in these conditions. And I'm going to talk to you about the problem within these, not in terms of it being a problem that you're creating, but a problem that has been created for you. And I think it's very interesting that your second option there is over the internet. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too. Okay, so let's go back to this idea of where's your retail market. What I'm hearing is that that blue shop where you go to shop for groceries is nowhere near your home. And that the distance you're having to travel for that orange shop to buy a special gift is even further than we've represented here. So let's talk about what that means. When we talk in terms of retail market fundamentals, I told you that those 3 different types of shops have different characteristics behind them. One of the most important characteristics is the distance that they count on being able to draw people for the kind of services and goods that they provide. And so the first question would be, where do I go for an emergency cup of sugar or coffee? That's kind of the other one I think of. This is part of almost your daily experience. And that counts on a very small radius, but with a lot of people in it who are spending on a very regular basis. Then we talk about some place where you go for groceries or prescriptions or maybe even for a dinner out. And it's a bigger area. These retailers are counting on a fewer number of people from a wider area that don't spend quite as much, but still spend regularly. And then this great big bubble represents where you go to shop for a special gift. And this is something that you might do monthly or even more irregularly. I'm sure we have people in the room who do a majority of their shopping back to school and holiday time. But where are you going to do those major shopping trips? And what starts to happen when you look at it this way is you need to understand that retail doesn't sit right on top of each other. It spreads itself out. And that's so it can accommodate the needs of those customer areas differently. And so each one of those blocks represents an area where they are drawing in neighborhood customers for that special emergency cup of sugar, almost daily trip. We lay the green ones over top of that, and we start to talk about the areas where you have more of a retail experience happening that's usually related to groceries or a drugstore or maybe a dining opportunity. But there are fewer of them in the market for the same reason they don't like to overlap. Now you see we have even fewer of those great big orange circles. The great big gigantic one on the left-hand side is Tyson's Corner Center. It's important for us to always keep in mind that we have the 7th largest mall in the country within the Metro DC area at Tyson's Corner. And that affects our ability to attract retail everywhere around the metro area. Okay, so then we talk about your retail market. And every time I come to an event that talks about retail, there's a lot of conversation about keeping retail within the borders. We got to keep retail in DC. How do we participate in retail at a local level? And I start to think about how retailers think. Retailers don't care. I was about to swear, I didn't swear. They don't care about municipal boundaries. That triangle means, the diamond means nothing to them, absolutely nothing. If you have to cross Eastern Avenue or Southern Avenue to get to a retailer, it doesn't matter to them. They'll easily go over to the other side, especially if Maryland's offering some benefits that we're not offering at the time. Or if land is cheaper or more plentiful, which we've seen happen over and over again. And so I want to add to the conversation today some stark reality. I actually think you're part of a larger Prince George's County retail market area. And I'm going to show you why. There's a big difference between being part of the southeastern DC retail area or being part of the northwestern Prince George's retail area. Now, I had wanted to ask you the question of where you specifically shop for groceries. And AmericaSpeaks told me I couldn't ask you 19 questions. But I'm able to make some assumptions based on my work down here. And I want to highlight some of those places that's in the Prince George's retail corridor that I'm imagining have to be patronized by you to fulfill your basic needs. So we're looking at places like Bowie Town Center. You can give me a shout or raise your hand. If this clapping, always welcome. Wilmore Town Center, Costco, Wegmans. Even I shop over there. I'm over in Montgomery County. Coral Hills, Penn Station, Center at Forestville, Marlow Heights, Rivertown Commons on Oxon Hill, and how about National Harbor? Okay, how about when they open the Tanger Outlet Center there the end of this year? That's right. Okay, and I heard Arundel Mills too. There you go. further description of just how far and wide we've become willing to go in order to satisfy these needs. Now look, I'm okay with you having to go down to National Harbor to buy a gift or some fantastic discount shopping opportunity. I'm not okay for you having to go out to Marlow Heights for groceries. It's too far, and I don't want you to have to go that far. So let's talk about this. When we talk about regionally supported retail, we're really looking in that list at Bowie Town Center, Woodmore, Rivertown Commons, and National Harbor. So let's look at the impact of their trade areas on Ward 7. You see it gets pretty well covered up. And what I'm trying to illustrate with that slide right there is you're considered covered. And those retailers know at those locations that you're willing to travel to them. You may not like it and you may not want to, but they're counting you as part of their trade area. Community-supported retail, now we start to see some opportunities within the district, within Ward 7 itself. And we talk about places like Coral Hills and Penn Station and Marlow Heights and Eastover. We can also talk about Old Heckinger Mall across the river and downtown Ward 7, to a certain extent as it is today, and a little bit more about how it's envisioned for tomorrow. We also get to talk about Fairfax Village and Fort Davis and Good Hope Marketplace. And now you can see the impact that those areas have. One of the things that I find most interesting about this is that some of your environments over there, Deanwood and Lincoln Heights, don't have representation on these areas. So they're having to go outside of a traditional market area in order to fulfill their community-supported retail needs. Okay, now let's look at neighborhood-supported retail. When we talk about neighborhood-supported retail, I just want to remind you that's where you go to get that emergency stick of butter when you're making cookies and you realize you have none. I find this very interesting. You have a lot of existing small neighborhood-type, small operation retail centers, but there aren't that many of them. And you can see how much of the ward isn't covered by those neighborhood-supported centers. And so we're going to spend some time talking about that today. We had an opportunity in 2012 to do a project with the DC Office of Planning called the DC Vibrant Retail Streets Toolkit. And I had the pleasure of working with some representatives from Fairlawn and Deanwood this past week on how to implement the toolkit within those two respective neighborhoods. And one of the things that we really wanted to focus on when we created this toolkit was how do we empower the neighborhoods so that they can change their environments and encourage better retail opportunities. I don't think this slide is bright pink enough. Can we make it more garish than it is? Okay. When we talk about a vibrant street, we started to define it. And we talked about it being a neighborhood core. That it's a retail environment where the activities of the people who live in that neighborhood sustain it and make it vital on a daily basis. So as we continued to do our work in this area, we realized that we had an objective, which was to create these successful retail districts that responded to demand. So remembering that ladder I showed you in the beginning, beginning with the idea that we can't just put retail somewhere because we want it. It has to be sustainable. And we have to have enough commerce in the market to support it, or else it fails, or it's poor quality, or they end up doing something out the back that you really wish they wouldn't. And that even the smallest amount of retail can really serve as that neighborhood core. And I gave you two examples over here of two just one store opportunities that are becoming that place that represents the neighborhood as a piece of identity and has become the place where the neighborhood intersects on a weekly basis. As we continued our work after we submitted this and the mayor announced it as a program of the district government in April 2012, we took it even further. And we found that this idea of a neighborhood core was something that we had to find a way to implement in every neighborhood, regardless of the things that we traditionally associate with being absolutely essential for retail development. And that included things like population, ethnic composition, location, income, or budget. And when we did that, we realized we had to start thinking about how to create that core in a way that could be retail or maybe wasn't retail. Maybe focused more on arts, humanities, studies, opportunities that would drive a retail environment that wasn't already there. And that's when we kind of got a little bit more inside our heads. I hope you can see that in the center circle there it says social capital. This might be an idea that you've been introduced to in a lot of different formats, but the way that we talk about it is that social capital is what's created from those opportunities where neighborhoods intersect, where you become invested in the other person, where you have the opportunity just on a regular basis to pass somebody, and then when they're not there, wonder where they are. I always think about it as the place where you'd find out that your neighbor's daughter made the honor roll, or that somebody's not been feeling that great and might need a pick-me-up. That social capital has been proven to be so immensely valuable, so much so that even the Department of Homeland Security is studying it today as a response mechanism to disaster. And then after Hurricane Katrina, they went back in and looked at the neighborhoods that were able to bounce back very quickly, and they had all created these neighborhood cores that had that social capital built in that allowed them to rise as a neighborhood again. And so, with those things in mind, and the idea that your neighborhood core doesn't have to be retail. It could be a playground, or it could be the park where you might have a block party or an impromptu picnic. It could be the place where you hang out across somebody's fence and talk about the news of the day. There are places in the country where it's the fire pit because it's really cold. But what's that place in your neighborhood where your interactions are being created? And I want you to think about that for a minute. And then I want you to tell me where it is. I'm going to turn it over to Don.
You've had a chance to really get your head into what it really means when you say you want retail. So we want you now to kind of work on two tasks. Number one, as Heather just said, where is your neighborhood's vibrant street or vibrant core? We want you to take a red dot, put it on the big map. I'm sorry, green dot. Thank you all. Green dot, put it on the big map at your table. Then we want you to spend the majority of your time thinking about or talking amongst yourselves about what makes your vibrant street or your vibrant core vibrant. Why is it the vibrant street or the vibrant core? All right, get started. Here's what you told the theme team. So these are the comments you got to the question, why is it vibrant? So number one, and here's a reality, many of you said there are not yet enough vibrant centers. So that's something that we need to really reflect on and talk about. So what we did learn from you are what are some of the things that would make for vibrancy, vibrant cores, streetscapes that are inviting, landscaping, lighting, clean, places where people can gather, a sense of community, libraries, rec centers, outdoor plazas, mixes of retail, art, and entertainment. Walkability. Walkability activates streets and provide a good pedestrian experience. That's where you run into people. That creates vibrancy. And access to public transportation. These are some of the large themes that came out. So we thank you for that. We're not going to poll on anything, but this is helpful because what we're really hearing is that you need more vibrancy in your neighborhoods. Now this will be important when we get to the next steps. At the end of the summit, we're going to need to talk about next steps, and this will be another opportunity for you to participate. Now, you heard Heather's presentation. Now I want you to pay attention to this presentation. Harriet Tregoning is the district's director of its Office of Planning. Many of you have heard her. She's someone who really, really understands this issue of vibrancy, and this is what she's going to talk about now. So without any further ado, let's bring up Harriet Tregoning. Please give her your attention.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am really excited to be here, and I am really excited to follow up on your discussion that you've been having at your tables, because what I'm going to talk about is how do we begin to get the things that you want. You want more retail, you want more vibrancy, you know you don't have enough of it in your community, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that is, but then we're going to talk about how we get some more. We know from the polling that you already did that urban retail is increasingly about dynamic, vibrant places and having a great experience. You know, a lot of you shop outside of the region and have been doing it for a long time, outside of the district. A significant number of you buy things on the internet. Let's just see a show of hands in the last month. How many people have bought something on the internet? Oh my God. Okay, well that's great, it's convenient. But think about the new retailer that you want to attract to your neighborhood and how tough that person's competition is going to be, because you are already used to shopping somewhere else and you're already used to using the internet. So it's really, really tough for a retailer. So what does your neighborhood potentially have that the internet can't offer? You know, it could offer a really great experience, right? Think of something that you can't get on the internet right now. You can't have a great meal on the internet, right? You can blog it, you can Yelp it, you can tweet about it, but you can't have it on the internet. So the places that are going to compete in the future in your neighborhoods have got to offer something that you can't get somewhere else. That means it has to be a wonderful experience. Maybe it has great service, maybe it offers something unique, but it's all about the experience. And you've just told us that you recognize that you don't have enough vibrancy in some of your neighborhoods, and part of that is because not enough places are walkable. So here are some of the things that can contribute to more vibrancy in your neighborhood. A lot of you have some great historic buildings and great historic neighborhoods and character. That's a great starting point. You have increasing safety. You have some great destinations. They're not yet usually shopping destinations, but you've got a growing number of really great park destinations, great public realm in some cases, and more coming. So you don't necessarily need a retail anchor, but maybe a civic space or a cultural space could be that anchor. Once you have an anchor institution, then you can begin to attract some retail around that anchor institution. We're in a city where it's actually pretty easy to get to your neighborhoods. It's pretty easy for you to get to other places because we have more choices for transportation than almost anywhere else in the country. Lots and lots of transportation choices, beginning with Metro, but we've got lots of bus service, we've got increasing number of bike share services, and you're about to get our newest streetcar amenity, right? And that's going to give you a lot more choices as well. So that's how you get to your place of neighborhood vibrancy. But then, once you're there, how walkable is it? How great an experience is it once you're there? What can we do to make those places, those vibrant places, wonderful and walkable once you get there? This will give you a sense, okay? We're the #6 city in the country for walkability, but our average in the city is only a 73, and there's not a single place in Ward 7, a single neighborhood, that even gets to a 73, right? So you have a lot less walkability than the rest of the city, and that means there's less stuff within walking distance by definition. How many of you want more stuff within walking distance? Yeah? Okay, right. So that's what I think we're talking about. How do we give you great walkable neighborhoods, and the stuff is going to come once those neighborhoods are more walkable. It's not just you who would like these great walkable neighborhoods. Every place that's seeing a lot of success in retail is around, and increasingly around walkable neighborhood centers, whether they're in traditional towns, whether they're in the center of downtown. But you know what? It's happening all over the suburbs. I know a lot of you think of Ward 7 as pretty much a suburban community, and you like that about Ward 7. But even suburban communities have walkable centers these days, and that's what they want, and that's what retailers want. So much so that we have more of that urbanizing, walkable suburban in our region than any place in the country. So there's a lot of it happening, and there's no reason Ward 7 shouldn't get some of that. And it's important because real estate investors tell us, analysts tell us, that is where most of the future growth is going to be, around walkable centers. It's going to hold more than 1/3 of all the jobs in metro areas. It's going to be the place with the greatest employment density. You want jobs in Ward 7, we need more walkability. It's right now in our region, 77% of the places, including those in the suburbs, that are looking to be walkable urban places are adding rail transit. And parts of Ward 7 are included in that. You're adding rail transit with streetcar, and that's going to give you more opportunities for walkability. And these are important because this is where things are going to be going in the future, how we're going to shape the growth of our region and of our city in the future. So to have a vibrant place, we need to have champions. Retail is a use it or lose it thing. Vibrant centers of your community are use it or lose it things. If you're not loyal patrons, if you're not helping to make these places wonderful, they're not going to be wonderful. So we're real excited to hear, to see what you've identified as your vibrant places, and we think that's going to provide the stepping stone for us to come together to help make these places successful and eventually great places for retail in your neighborhoods. Thank you.
Now I want to bring up the next important presentation. We've been giving you a lot of important presentations. So, Deputy Mayor Victor Hoskins, he's the man who really understands the district strategy as well as Ward 7 strategy. He not only understands it, he's responsible for helping to make sure that these projects and investments are done according to the district's economic development strategy. He's an expert in this stuff. We're going to bring him up. Please give him your attention. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Victor Hoskins.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you so much for coming here on a Saturday. I know you guys have all kinds of things to do at home. I know I have my honey-do list that I will be doing this afternoon, trust me. But I have to say this before I start. When my wife and I drove up here, you know, I drive and, you know, work and walk all over the city, but she doesn't. And when she drove up to this school, she said, "What is that?" She said, what college is that? And I go, "No, that's what's in high school." She said, "A high school?" I said, "It's not just a high school, but it's a science, technology, and engineering and math high school." So that is something that you should be very proud of. This community is changing, and it's changing because of the vision of the mayor for creating one city of opportunity all the way across the city, because of the vision of the city council, people like Councilwoman Alexander, Councilman Marion Berry, and others on the city council. They've decided that, listen, all the cities should prosper at the same time. When the water's rising, all boats should rise. And I really want to thank the people who helped organize this. Director Tregoning and her team has done a tremendous job of pulling this together. Thank you so much. And they also have kicked off Illuminate Ward 8 last week, so they have been really working extremely hard, and we've all enjoyed that. In addition to that, I want to give a special thanks to Michael Durso. Even though Michael Durso is moving on to the private sector, he has worked very tirelessly to put together an agenda for us, and we want to thank you for that, Michael. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on right now in Ward 7. So in 2006, the comprehensive plan introduced the concept of downtown Ward 7. And from your Retail 101 that you just went through, you know that this is a regional supported retail designation. And the downtown area includes right now DOES, it includes the East River Shopping Center, Senator Square, Greenway Shopping Center, and the current tenant mix includes Safeway, CVS, Murray's, McDonald's, Foot Locker, Rainbow Clothing, and Citibank. There's a large quantity of small businesses throughout the area. And right now, under construction is one extremely important project right near the transit station, Park 7. The Park 7 developers have really worked tirelessly to fill that 20,000 square foot of space. And as a matter of fact, the mayor was out in Las Vegas just in the month of May working to attract tenants to this very location. It'll be 346 units of housing and 20,000 square feet of retail. And some of that retail will be sit-down restaurants, which will be very nice for the area. Also, Katz Properties recently acquired East River Shopping Center for $33.6 million, and I know they have some plans for renovating and improving the tenant mix. Some more investment in that area. The shopping center is 150,000 square feet, and it really does a pretty good job of serving the community, but we all know that we all have some additional taste that we want satisfied. So beyond the government role in the area and having DOES there in that Park 7 project, there are other projects throughout the Ward 7 that are underway. Skyland Shopping Center, everybody's heard about that earlier, that 350,000 square foot shopping center that's underway. The Eastgate project, of course, with the DC Housing Authority. Thank you very much, Adrienne Todman, for moving that deal forward. She's over there in the back, let's recognize her. And an extremely important project is the streetcar project. I mean, everyone knows that the streetcar project will connect this part of town really to downtown, and that has only been done by bus. And I think that what bodes for us in the future is extremely bright. I think the transformation is going to be, sudden. I think it's going to be the kind of transformation we all look for. So I look forward to working on that with you in the future. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and now we're going to move back to Don. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Hoskins. Now, you've had a number of presentations, and the presentation you got from Deputy Mayor Hoskins was on downtown Ward 7. Now, for the next 20 or 25 minutes, what we're going to do is focus on two questions. How can downtown Ward 7 become more vibrant, support new retail, cultural, and civic places? And then, what other priorities should be considered for downtown Ward 7 going forward? Go ahead and get to work. Okay. Now, we've had a discussion about downtown Ward 7. That's clearly the key economic center of the ward. Now we're going to talk about 5 other, what we call strategic locations, and we need to develop those with your guidance. Now, each of these strategic locations got some community retail in it already, or regional supported retail, and remember what Heather talked about. We're going to get 2 presentations that are going to elaborate on what's going on at each of these 5 strategic locations. The first one's going to come from Michael Durso. Many of you know Michael. He's been formerly in the city administrator's office, formerly with DMPED, who's going to describe each of the 5 locations in detail. He's going to be followed by Heather Arnold, who you've already been introduced to, who's going to talk about a perspective we want you to kind of adopt. And that perspective is the perspective of a private investor. Thinking through, if you're a private investor, why are you going to invest in Ward 7? So we want you to start preparing yourself first to look at all 5 of these strategic locations. Then Heather is going to talk about a perspective of a person who is a potential investor, okay? All right, let's bring up Michael Durso, and he'll be followed by Heather Arnold.
Thanks, sir. Good afternoon, Ward 7. This is my 3rd summit event, and it is a pleasure to see so many people here still engaged and enjoying a lot of the information that we're providing. Don was dead on. You've heard a lot of information about the ward. You saw the big picture review. We talked a lot about the retail opportunities. Heather gave a very honest and truthful explanation about retail in the ward, as well as the city and in the region. What I want to do today is get everyone focused back down to some of these 5 strategic locations that we have here in the ward. We went ahead and picked these 5 so that we could condense the conversation to be more targeted to specific locations. And those areas are Fairlawn, Pennsylvania Avenue, as well as Benning Avenue, metro area, or Benning Road, excuse me, metro area, Penn Branch Shopping Center, the Nanny Helen Burroughs at Division Avenue / Strand Theater area, just right here, not too far, and then the Capitol Gateway Marketplace. Our first location is your Penn Branch Shopping Center at the corners of Pennsylvania and Branch Avenue. It is community-supported retail. Heather will talk more about that, but you heard what that means earlier in the day. It is an area functioning as retail, 90,000 square feet, approximately 4 acres. It has a tenant mix that we're familiar with, CVS, Wachovia, several DC agencies. One of the things that we know and have heard for a while is a lack of preferred dining options at Penn Branch. Site has the potential to become a mixed-use development project. And there's also opportunities to pair up future development at Penn Branch with any Great Streets-related incentives. So as we start thinking a little bit more about Penn Branch, I want you to start taking the information that we've heard and look at how Penn Branch as a destination can be improved. Our next location is just a little down Pennsylvania Avenue, Fairlawn, Pennsylvania Avenue. We also refer to those as the 2400 blocks of Pennsylvania Avenue. That's right as you come across Sousa Bridge and before your LaFont Square area. It's a little different than Penn Branch. It consists of storefront-style retail. So those are your actual individual buildings, sometimes 1 story, 2 stories. It's anchored by the Grays, which is a recently completed project, and the Fairlawn Market, as well as other retail options are in that area. It is also located along a great street, and it has the potential for public and private collaboration to develop a larger scale project. So again, I want everyone to start thinking about how we improve the Fairlawn, Pennsylvania Avenue location. Very close to here, just on the other side of the football field here at H.D. Woodson, is your Nanny Helen Burroughs at Division Avenue Strand Theater. It is a neighborhood-supported retail destination. This area consists of the Strand Theater, the former trash transfer site, as well as some other existing retail and some of your religious institutions in the area. There are ongoing negotiations with several of the projects. The Strand is an ongoing project. 5201 Hayes is also an ongoing negotiation, but there are some challenges. It has the opportunity to have Great Streets related incentives, but improving market conditions at Nanny Helen Burroughs and Division is critical. And I want folks to think about that and think about, again, some of what Heather has shared, as well as Director Tregoning has shared about market conditions and things that must be in place to improve future opportunities. Benning Road Metro. We've had a lot of conversations. When I was in the Deputy Mayor's office, there was always a discussion about how do we improve upon this transit-oriented site. This also consists of numerous sites, either some of your small shopping centers, but also some of your pad sites. The tenant mix includes the Denny's that we're all familiar with, several fast food options, dry cleaners, and other neighborhood retail. The challenge here is balancing the existing smaller shopping centers with your retail sites that need to be ultimately improved, and how do we make that more conducive for future development. And then also looking at how the relationship with the Benning Road Metro Station can also create an opportunity. WMATA coordination is critical in the future. And then lastly is the Capitol Gateway. And I think this is a unique scenario because a lot of times we're not looking at how some of our sites also are in relationship to what is near us on the other side of Maryland. So we all know that that is currently a flat piece of land, which will ultimately end up becoming one of the ward's Walmart locations. 120,000 square feet, 27,000 of additional retail opportunities, commercial. It's a real good opportunity for the district to retain its own shoppers, but also attract Maryland shoppers further out East Capitol Street or further up MLK Highway in neighborhoods such as Seat Pleasant, or just on the other side of the line in Capitol Heights. But it's important to also think about how future development at the metro location on the Maryland side is also critical to the success here in the district. Even though that is a Maryland metro stop, that is a stop that we all have used if you live in that part of town. And I think everyone should look at how Capitol Gateway, how Capitol Heights Metro, and what happens in Maryland also is something that we can benefit here in the district. So what does this mean for retail? And I will bring up my colleague, Heather Arnold.
So Michael gave a great overview of all of the things that are happening in Ward 7 from a development perspective, but what we need to do with that information is figure out what it means for retail. So when I think about retail, I'm immediately drawn to the idea of a three-legged stool that for the past several decades has been somehow standing on just two legs. And those two legs have been the private sector and the public sector. And the reason that I'm here today, and a big part of the Vibrant Streets initiative that we're working on, and what I'm really hoping that you guys can take away with today is how the community can be part of this conversation as well. So let's talk about each one of these and how they operate when it comes to retail. For the private sector, we're really talking about real estate developers, financial institutions that are responsible for lending money, and retailers. I added Donald Trump in there because I couldn't think of anybody else who more epitomized the real estate development community than he. And so those people have very specific needs and objectives when they're making decisions about the retail that happens in your community. And they're almost entirely driven by financial motivation, partially because they have to pay the bills. And so you think about the big real estate developers being part of the private sector, you have to keep in mind that the small retailers are as well. And those are people who usually aren't making a whole ton of money. There's a lot of hand-to-mouth, paycheck-to-paycheck kind of operations that go on with that type of endeavor as well. And we want them to be able to succeed just as well as the development community. When it comes to the public sector, we talk about local and federal government in DC. And we also talk about organizations like community development corporations and nonprofit organizations, including your own Deanwood Heights Main Street operation, who I had the pleasure to work with this week during our Vibrant Streets workshops. Community, we're talking about you. Not just are we talking about you as residents, but more importantly, we're talking about you as customers. And what happens when we talk about you as customers is suddenly you have skin in the game. Because as customers, you control the outcome of these retail real estate developments and whether or not they're sustainable and whether or not they persevere. So let's talk about some realities. I'm going to help you understand the private sector and how it thinks, because we like to put it down to one note. Oh, they just want to make money and buy a Mercedes and get out of town. It's more complicated than that. And so what I wanted to do today is to kind of give you the private sector's playbook so that you know who you're talking to across the table when that opportunity arises. First of all, I want you to understand that from a retail perspective, we talk about how if I had a condo and I wanted to say, free, you can have this condo for free, I'd have no lack of people who wanted it, almost no matter where it is. If I said, here's some office space, you can have it for free, run a company out of it, go crazy, I'd still have a line of people who wanted it. If I had a retail space that I'm going to give away, and it's not in the right location, and it doesn't have the visibility, and it's not accessible, and it's not someplace that customers can get to, and it's not someplace customers will be aware of, I can't give it away. And I think that's really important for you to understand. So we like to use this image of these 15,000 square feet that are available for 5 years rent-free. That sign was up for 18 months, and they finally took it down because they couldn't get anybody in this location, and they leased it out to an industrial use. But day one, if you're a retailer, you need to be able to pay your rent. You need to be able to pay payroll. But rent's just a small part of it because then you get payroll, inventory, insurance, taxes. And all those things lead to a situation where you need sales immediately. And the biggest reason for that is because your inventory costs you money out of your pocket day one. And so in order to be able to have an operation that stocks those things, you need to be able to generate sales quickly. It's part of the reason that we see service retail having a real strong comeback after the economic downturn, because they don't have to maintain the same level of inventory that a normal store would. There are a whole bunch of issues that come into retail site selection. And I hear a lot from Ward 7 and sometimes Ward 8 about how we're not getting retail for all these reasons, and even though we have the income and we have the population, why aren't we getting retail down here? So we're going to talk about that. When retailers look at sites, the very best retailers, so I'm talking about your Starbucks, your Walmart, all the people that we'd really love to see down in this area are looking at site selection factors. And they include the residential population, the income level, the employee population, the education level, the walkability of the area, how accessible is it to Metro, the traffic counts on the street, and the impact of nearby competition. So we've talked about a couple of these throughout the day, and you saw the impact that competition is having on this environment right now, and all of those other retail centers that consider you to be covered by operations that they have going on somewhere else. I want to talk to you a little bit about how these get applied depending on what type of retailer we're talking about. So this is an example of home decor retailer site selection. When we created these diagrams, we actually were working with our brokerage division to talk to them about what do home decor retailers look for when they're entering a new market. And so these are based on real life. Like I should say dun dun dun, like it's an episode of Homicide or something. Okay, so for home decor site selection, one of the first things that we see them looking at in 3 different types of neighborhoods is the population. This particular retailer wanted to have over 35,000 people within 3 miles. The sites 1 and 2 met that requirement. Site 3 didn't. It's out. It's just that clean. Average household income, 50,000 square feet within 3 miles. They both met that requirement. They moved on to the next round. But the question about average household income would not even get asked until they knew that they had the population density to support it. Minimum education, they wanted them to have a high level of college education. Number 1 had a pretty decent level of people who had completed graduate school. Number 2, college. They both moved on. The competitive environment, they didn't want it to be very competitive. They wanted to be the only game in town. In neighborhood 1, wasn't that competitive. There wasn't a lot going on from a home decor standpoint. But in number 2, it was very high and already established, and they bowed out. At the end of the day, their ability to move into neighborhood 1 was dependent on being able to find an appropriate site. There are lots of neighborhoods that go through this process, and all of the numbers add up. It all makes sense until you get to that very last one, and they're looking for 3,000 square feet, and all you have is 2,200, and that is going to be a reason enough for them to look somewhere else. And so what we need to keep in mind with this type of diagram, and what I'm trying to explain, is that there's a process. And it's not always the same process, and different retailers are going to have different ways of looking at things, but there is a process. Nail salons. I actually love this slide because I could never answer the question, why are there nail salons everywhere? I never knew what the good reason for it was until I did this diagram and it suddenly made sense to me. So we looked at what their population requirements were, what their income requirements were. They're looking for a high daytime population because they want people to patronize their business from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And they wanted the competitive environment to be high, which means they wanted to be around other types of retailers that were part of people's weekly shopping trips. And it was easy enough for them to find locations in every place. The reason there are so many nail salons everywhere is because their barriers to entry into any market are very low. Now let's look at the other extreme, organic grocery, where the barriers to entry are very high. So in this situation, you see neighborhood number 3 getting kind of a tepid, get out of the average household income jail free card, where they advanced from a yellow, almost kicked out status, but they were close enough to their minimum requirement of $45,000 to advance. The second site got kicked out because they didn't have a high enough traffic volume. And for retailers, traffic volume means accessibility and visibility, 2 of the most important things that they need in order to succeed. They got kicked. Number 1 gets kicked out at the last level because there wasn't a supermarket tax credit available in that neighborhood, but there was in neighborhood 3. And they selected a location in neighborhood 3. What I thought was really important to explain to you about this slide is that the presence or absence of an incentive made absolutely no difference until the 11th hour. And those neighborhoods had to meet all of the other requirements in order for the incentive to have an impact at all. So now that I've fully educated you and you're ready to go work for any major banking institution evaluating retail opportunities, I want you to look at the retail site selection matrix that either your facilitator has given to you or is going to hand out to you right now. It looks like this. And what we've done with this document is take all of the major considerations from a data standpoint that retailers, retail developers, and private lending institutions think about when they're evaluating the viability of retail. And we applied this information to the strategic locations that Mike just overviewed with you. What I wanted to show you was that a green box means that that particular retail center meets the qualifications for the resident population on the first line. Yellow means it falls just short of it, and red means it does not meet. It's almost like a grade card at this point. And the same goes on then for median household income, employee population, and et cetera. So if you read it going down, you'll see how each of these centers either meets, just barely fails to meet, or completely fails to meet the expectations of the private sector for each of those developments. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heather. That was helpful because your work task is to have a discussion, but you got to put your feet in the shoes of an investor. You now want to put your feet in the shoes of someone in the private sector who may want to invest in one of these locations. And so your conversation is going to look at each of the 5 locations. So laptop operators, table facilitators, you might want to take a location at a time, but if you don't, you got to make sure that you take the input and put it in the right box. So you're going to have multiple boxes. So what I would ask you at the tables to do, the participants, take out worksheet number 4 and begin to jot down some of the answers to the question, if you were a private sector lending institution, which strategic location would you invest in first and why? It's the and why. Now, why is this helpful? If we understand how private sector investors are thinking, that will guide what we recommend get priority for certain kinds of investment from you and from the public sector. Okay? Understand? All right, get to work. Now we're going to bring Heather back, and she's going to make another presentation to you. And this time she's going to talk about the retail locations from a different perspective, that of a community member. Remember she talked about that 3-legged stool? Now she's going to talk about it from the standpoint of a community member. Heather Arnold.
Thank you. Okay, so I hope you don't all feel too dirty and grimy for thinking like the private sector there. Wash yourselves clean. Now we're going to talk about the community. One of the things that is incredibly important in looking at these retail sites is not just about their value in terms of money. Now I want to talk about them in terms of their value to the community. Using the same sites that you've looked at, I want you to reassess them, not from a private sector standpoint, so take that hat off, put on your community hat. It was the one you wore when you came in the door. And think about which of these sites has the highest value to you as a member of the community. In terms of, is it convenient to you? Is it close to your home? Does it add to your quality of life by offering a retail experience close to where you live? What's the tradition and history of that place? Is that part of the story of your neighborhood? Does that place represent your hometown experience? If you had to do a slideshow of growing up or your time living in Ward 7, would that place be part of it? And is it part of how we defined your vibrant street or your neighborhood core when we talked earlier this morning? Is it the place where your bonds with the neighborhood are being created or could be created under better circumstances? And so now we're going to ask to open up the question, which of these locations that are in front of you for conversation have the greatest value to you as a member of the community?
All right. Well, let me say this. Just take a second and look around the room. Look at how full this room still is. Give yourselves a hand. Can nobody say that Ward 7 didn't show up and work? Amen. All right, now, we're going to report back on the information, the themes we got from the downtown Ward 7 conversation. We're going to do that, and the theme team is going to theme on what they got from you about the investors and the community values. But now we're going to talk about downtown Ward 7. So pay attention, because then I'm going to ask you to do some polling. So here we go. The more vibrant downtown Ward 7. What can make it more vibrant? Downtown Ward 7. Improve transportation options. Create community outdoor spaces. Create more attractive streetscapes. Add in new and diverse retail options. Well, surprise, surprise, no more carryouts. More sit-down restaurants and cafes. Develop community, cultural arts centers, and entertainment options. All right, and improve public safety. All right, we want you to now pick your top 2. This is your poll. Choose your top 2 priorities out of these 7. All right, here are our results. Okay, 38%, number 5, no more carryouts, more sit-down restaurants and cafes. Okay, following right behind it, number 6, develop community and cultural arts centers and entertainment options. Okay, now, the second question that we asked had to do with what are some other priorities, what are some additional things that can make downtown Ward 7 more attractive, more vibrant, attract you more. Number 1, improve basic public safety even before beginning new development. Provide greater community involvement, opportunities for you to influence, to be heard. Improve transportation, public transit options. We all know the streetcar is coming. Traffic flow, pedestrian safety. Focus on workforce development, intergenerational job training. Enhance access to technology, make Ward 7 Wi-Fi positive. Keep public areas clean and litter-free. Increase opportunities for small local business. All right, as we did in the previous poll, select your top 2. Okay. Whoa, number 4. Almost 50%. Focus on workforce development. Following behind that one is number 2, provide greater community involvement, improve government ward communications, give residents more input on new projects. Okay, fair enough. We just have a little bit more work for you to do. We're going to get the theme team report. You had 2 discussions on strategic retail locations. These are very important, so we're going to now see what those themes are. And the first one is going to be from the standpoint of the investor. Okay, why invest? If I'm an investor, why would I invest? Penn Branch. lack of retail competition in the neighborhood, high visibility along established thoroughfare with high traffic volume, high medium income and education level in the surrounding community, has several transportation options, good walkability, bus circulator access, parking, but no metro. Access to Great Street program dollars, has capacity for restaurants. Benning Road, accessibility, a lot of transit accessibility, daytime and residential population density, existing retail base that can be built upon, future opportunities with new development already coming out of the pipe. Capital Gateway, new housing and development, a regional draw for both Maryland and the district shopper, accessibility, transit, destination retailer, Walmart has committed to the area. That's obviously a big magnet. All right, next. Now, with these two, what we got are more examples of what might be the kinds of things that an investor would think about. These were not as pronounced as the other three. Fairlawn, Pennsylvania Avenue, transportation is high car traffic, pending intersection improvements, high bus traffic. These are examples of what might make an investor, because we didn't get a lot of your data. Good location, and it's near other amenities and development. Nanny Helen Burroughs in the Strand. Improvements and investment are needed, has potential as retail priority area, but it has been a long time since that area has been developed. New apartment buildings are adding density. So with these two locations, you see that there's some future work. And this is important for you to keep in mind, because when we get to next steps, that's where some of this will become more important. Okay, so thank you very much on that. Now, we want you to vote for your top two. Benning Road metro area. Okay, Capital Gateway. Wow, those would be the two, the top two where you would, if you were a private sector investor, based on the criteria presented, Benning Road metro area and the Capital Gateway. That's very interesting. Thank you very much. Now, let's repeat that very same process with your community hat on. Okay, these again are examples for Prynne Branch, the kinds of things that would be taken into consideration from the standpoint of the community's value are, and there's a high medium income and education level in the surrounding community. There are transportation options. It's a historical area. It has proximity to community assets, low crime, and a sense of community. There is a sense of community. Store owners know the residents. There is a hometown feel. Let's move on. All right, here's Benning Road. It's a transportation hub, lots of traffic from the region and flexible transit options, walkability. It's got historic value. Example, a shrimp boat, a lot of tradition, intergenerational connections. There's a community gathering place there. Next. Okay, Capital Gateway. It's close to a metro, convenient, has a highly engaged community. Next. All right, now, Fairlawn. Proximity and access to other neighborhoods and amenities. Vibrancy, needs some improved roads and a grocery store. Diverse mix of housing and incomes. Nanny Helen Burroughs and Strand, Division Avenue, there's a lot of history there. Community and cultural hub, green space, Malcolm X Park, Woodson, absolutely. Nice streetscape and traffic counts. So what you begin to see here for each of these 5 strategic locations are some of the values that could be assigned to them. Now, before we leave today, we're going to see where the convergence is between an investor and the community's values. Where we see that convergence, we want to pay attention to it, but we also want to pay attention to where there's a divergence. because then the question is, what do we have to do to bring it into convergence? Okay, we're going to poll on these as well. So which two have the highest value to the community? Keep your community hat on. Which two of these 5 strategic locations have the highest value to the community? Okay. 68%, Benning Road metro area, followed by Penn Branch. Nanny Helen Burroughs. Okay. All right. This is very helpful. Thank you very much. We now are going to be able to create a matrix, which you'll see in a few minutes, that actually allows us to see where the convergence and the divergence is. But while they're putting that together, all right, here it is. I like that. Okay, so now let me bring up Harriet Tregoning, Heather Arnold again. They're going to talk about these results a little bit.
I think Heather and I would both give you guys props.
Absolutely.
Because you acted like professional investors. You could have been retailers or property owners, developers. You made very, very good points about why certain places were better to invest in than others. And here we have some clear priorities from you, which is going to be very, very, very helpful for Benning Road in particular. Now, the second area of reasonable convergence, I think, is Penn Branch. Now, Capital Gateway, you all agree, is probably going to be successful, but it's not the place that's most important to you as a community, and we hear that. We absolutely hear that. A place that is very important to you as a community, but doesn't have some of those real estate fundamentals, is the Strand Theater, right? Nanny Helen Burroughs, and so we hear that too. And so I think that when we talk about next steps, I think that places where there's great importance to you as a community, but where the real estate fundamentals aren't there yet, that means we might focus other types of resources in those places to begin to build that vibrancy that might attract future retail, but in the meantime, make this the heart of the community as you seem to want it to be. Heather?
I just wanted to add that I also was very impressed with your private sector analysis, and you're all hired if I ever get a big lottery win and need to invest lots of money. But I really wanted to point out that I thought that the Strand Theater outcome was really interesting as well. And having a real fundamental understanding that the private sector doesn't understand the Strand in the same way that you do. And it doesn't mean that it's not important. It means that it's important to different groups for different reasons. And that's really where, when we think about next steps, we're going to talk about how do you fill the gap between those two things. Because really, when we look at these things in terms of what can happen and what should happen, to my mind, the areas that get the highest ranking for community value should absolutely be the highest priority. So thank you so much for your thoughtful thinking on that.
That was outstanding. I'm talking about the whole thing. This is how it all came together with that matrix. That's the guidance that we really needed to get today. So now we just got 2 more things. Deputy Mayor Victor Hoskins is going to come up and respond to some of the questions that we got earlier today. We don't want you to think that you came here and you weren't listened to. We're going to give you some immediate responses, and you can figure out that there will be more later. Then we're going to do an evaluation of today's summit, and then the mayor is going to give us some next steps. Victor?
Yeah, thank you, Don. First, there was a question about being involved in meetings that are related to Skyland. If you would like to do that, you should email namita.shah, that's N-I-M-I-T-A.shah, S-H-A-H, at dc.gov. That's namita.shah at dc.gov. And if you didn't get that, you can grab me on the way out. There was also a question about the goals for hiring on DC government sponsored projects. The goal is 51% for DC residents. There was also a question on who is monitoring these hiring goals, and it's actually the Department of Employment Services, and it's as part of FirstSource. There was a question about small businesses that are working on various projects in the in Ward 7, and a couple are Blue Sky, and I do believe that the CEO of Blue Sky was here early, Scott Irving, but he's gone now. AWASH, and also Deanwood Cafe, and they have a list of others that you can get after this. And then there was a question about who in Ward 7 was part of the project, the same companies, and then how do DC residents, how many DC residents worked on the Blue Sky Development Project? There were actually 27, and half of those were from Ward 7, and many of them were returning citizens. There was a question about how many local businesses have worked on the streetcar project, and actually how many local residents were hired on the streetcar project, and so far there have been seven drivers. They have come from Ward 5, 7, and 8. And I think that was it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Hoskins. I want to take a second to asking to stand up and be recognized, Councilmember Marion Barry, someone we all know, Ward 8, Councilmember.
Hello, Ward 7. Hello, Ward 7. Hello, Ward 7. Ward 7 is my second home. I lived in Ward 7 at 3607 Sudan Road for 14 years. In every election I've had, at large or for mayor, Ward 7 has come in strong. And you ought to know that Yvette Alexander is doing an outstanding job of representing Ward 8. We both sat on the end of the dais, just on the very end, me, 2-1 for her. We're going to have our Economic Development Summit in Ward 8 in September. But Ward 8 is in need of more development, more restaurants, stores, and et cetera. But Ward 7 is on the move. I often drive through Ward 7, going to other meetings and things like that. I still have a strong heart and sentiment for Ward 7, because when I was here those 14 years, we did a lot together, didn't we? Did we? Did we? Did we? Did we? And I'm delighted to be at the new Woodson Senior High School. I'm on the education committee with David Catania, and we'll surprise everybody, didn't we? We've been fussing and fighting, disagreeing with him. He's been disrespectful. But we decided that we're going to come together for the good of the children and the parents in this community. So if you watch 13, you'll see us working together, pushing together. We know that 2/3 of the school population is low income and poverty. In poverty. We know that poverty has a devastating effect on education. People in poverty, young people that come less prepared, less support at home. And I'll give you one example about Christopher and myself. F and I had Christopher June 17, 1980. Well, she had him, I didn't. I just, I just did one component of it. And for the 3rd grade, he went to a private school. And in the 4th grade, Effie wanted him to go to St. Albans. I didn't like that. I wanted to go to Beers Elementary. And we compromised. I paid half the tuition. She paid the other half the tuition. In the 5th year, we went to Merch because David Hall's sister was the principal, so we could do that. Then he went to Jefferson with Miss White to the 8th grade, 9th grade. I'm going to stop. Yvette knows that I'm going to tell the story about that. And finally, got to Wilson High School. The point I wanted to make is that we had all the resources, had all the transportation, had all the political connection. What about those parents in Ward 7 and 8 that don't have those kinds of things? And finally, I got good news for you in Ward 7 about Ward 8. We're in the process of building a $140 million new balloon. Come on. And Mayor Gray did that, too. I want to thank the mayor for his leadership and his moving on. Thank you very, very much. I just love you.
We love you, too.
Okay, now we want to do an evaluation. You can see that the laptops and iPads are being picked up. Don't worry about that. Do hold on to your keypads because we're going to do an evaluation right now. You did not see it as robbery to give up a whole day to this activity. So we want to know whether it worked and how we can make it better. So I'm going to ask 2 questions. So get your keypads ready. All right, we've got the screen up. To what degree have your opinions or perspectives changed or shifted on any of our major topics today? The reason we ask this question is because it was designed to create an opportunity for more deliberate, informed discussion. So please answer this question. A little bit, quite a bit, a lot. So if you look at it from the standpoint of 75%, there was a change, a shift in perspectives. Thank you for that. That means that everybody who came in is leaving with a slightly different perspective or more. Okay, thank you. Now, what is your level of satisfaction with the Ward 7 Summit? Give us your answer to this question. All right. What is your level of satisfaction? 33, 38. That's about 90%, from medium to very high. We thank you for that. It's important that you felt that your day was well used. Give yourselves a hand for all of the work you've done today. Now don't go, because now we're going to have Mayor Gray talk to us about next steps.
I'm going to do this quite quickly because I get the message, okay? That everybody's ready to roll. First of all, can we have a big hand for the folks who helped put this on today? America Speaks. And especially Don Edwards, who has done such a great job. And also to Mike Durso, who has worked so hard to help make this happen. Mike is moving on to Georgetown University. This was his last DC government assignment, and didn't he do a great job in making it happen? First of all, I think we've learned a lot here today, and one of the things I hope that the external world has learned, and that is Ward 7 cares about Ward 7. There is no question about it. Look at the number of people who came today. Look at the number of people who are still here. I bet you we still have 75% of the people who started this day in this room right now, 5 hours later. Congratulations, Ward 7. Also, secondly, it was great to get the information on why invest, who would invest. And I'm not sure we would have come to these conclusions without the benefit of this information today. And that is, I won't say overwhelmingly, but quite substantially, people said Benning Road, right? Benning Road is one of the main streets in Ward 7. And that is a focal point that we did not miss. There will be the streetcars that will be going out Benning Road. After the first line will go out to Oklahoma Avenue. And then eventually the streetcars will go all the way out to the shrimp boat at the at the metro station right there. And by the way, for those who don't know, we are modernizing Spingarn High School. Spingarn High School, in part, will become a career and technical education school. There will be a new streetcar maintenance facility that will be in the area of Spingarn, and it will help to train our young people in wards 5, 7, and 8 for jobs in Metro, in addition to being able to run the streetcars. Also, Capital Gateway. Capital Gateway, that will be a great opportunity for us to not only serve the people who live in that area of Ward 7, but as well to be able to serve people from Prince George's County who will come across the line and spend their money in the District of Columbia to be able to create more tax dollars for us. And Penn Branch. Penn Branch is going to be a challenge. For those who know the topography of Penn Branch, I don't know who designed it, but boy, you know, one side of it is on one level and the other side is on the other level. And it'll be interesting for us to be able to engage in the discussion about Penn Branch. Anywhere from what do we do with what's there to starting over again with a new shopping facility because the topography is so difficult. In fact, what Penn Branch had become, for those who know, about 35 to 40% of the occupancy was the DC government, with DMV, with MPD, and other operations. That's not really a shopping facility to me. That's using it as space, you know, to do government services. I think what people really want are amenities that are in close proximity to them, and it may mean with Penn Branch that we may wind up starting all over again. So as you think about Penn Branch, think about that. Now, quickly, there were 4 or 5 things that people talked about that we will try to follow up on. First of all, us being able to use the Great Streets Initiative. Andre still here? Where's Andre? He was here. He was here a couple of minutes ago. He may be out in the hall. There he is. I just want to acknowledge Andre Byers, who runs our Great Streets Initiative and does a terrific job. 5 of the great streets across the District of Columbia, 5 of those great streets are on the east end of the District of Columbia, which means that there will be very substantial investments that will continue to be made in great streets. Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast, Nanny Helen Burroughs, Benning Road, Minnesota Avenue, and then on the Ward 8 side, Martin Luther King and South Capitol Street. And that will help us increase the investments in streetscapes that will make the areas amenable to additional retail and commercial development, like we've done with Nanny Helen Burroughs Avenue. Secondly, you heard a lot about the vibrant retail streets, workshops and efforts. We're going to do more to continue to bring those to areas like the ones we talked about, and that is Benning Road, Capital Gateway, and Penn Branch, to engage people in helping us to get to the next place. Bringing property owners together, our commercial property owners, our retail property owners, bringing them together to talk about how we build upon what we've done today here in this workshop, non-residential property owners. Engaging the community. Didn't we have the community in here today? Isn't that who we had in here today, the community of Ward 7? And we want to continue to do that in the best way possible. We already have, of course, our advisory neighborhood commissions. We have our civic associations, but it may be a place for creating advisory groups around specific projects in which we would engage here in Ward 7, around Benning Road, around Capital Gateway, around Penn Branch, so that we don't lose any momentum. And then the 5th thing is, those areas that we have determined not to be retail ready yet, being able to work with the various organizations that already exist to get them to the point of being retail ready. So I think we got a great start here today, and a great start is just by the very presence of everybody who was here. I don't know, I think we had 28 tables. All those tables were filled. That's almost 300 people by itself on a Saturday in the summer where there are competing events. You made a powerful statement today, Ward 7, and that is you care about this ward. You want to be able to see it continue to progress. Your government cares about it. This is a promise that we made 2.5 years ago. We are fulfilling a promise. This is a beginning, not a middle, not an end. It is a beginning to continue the momentum that we already have. We talked about Skyland today. We talked about downtown Ward 7. We talked about all the development that's taking place, even the baseball academy, which will be the only the second in the nation of its kind for our young people. We are committed to creating the amenities in this part of the city that will have people saying that I can't wait to move to Ward 7. Thank you all very much.
All right, before you leave, I want to thank you. I want to thank the Office of Planning. I want to thank the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. On behalf of America Speaks, we want to thank all of you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you. Thank you, and God bless.